The silver bullet meant for the Alpha King's heart tears through my chest instead, and as I fall, the last thing I see is his face, not grateful, but utterly enraged. I wasn't supposed to be here. Omegas didn't attend peace summits. We didn't stand in grand halls with marble floors and chandeliers that cost more than our entire lives. We stayed in the healing quarters, grinding herbs and stitching wounds, invisible as shadows. But today, the death sense had driven me from my workroom like a whip crack. It started as it always did, a metallic taste on my tongue, a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Then came the vision, sharp and brutal, Alpha King Theron Nightfang, the most powerful werewolf in the Northern Territories, collapsing in a pool of blood. 3 minutes. Maybe 4. My hands had been shaking so badly I'd dropped the mortar I'd been holding. It shattered on the stone floor, but I was already running. The guards at the summit hall didn't even glance at me as I slipped through the servants' entrance. That's what it meant to be an Omega healer. You could walk through walls, for all anyone cared. The hall was packed with alphas from 7 territories, their power thick enough to choke on. At the center of it all stood Theron Nightfang, his dark hair pulled back, his expression carved from ice. He was listening to Alpha Princess Seraphine, his bride-to-be, her red lips curved in a smile that never reached her eyes. 3 days. In 3 days, they would marry, and a century of bloodshed would finally end. That's what everyone said. Peace at last. But I'd seen the bodies. I'd stitched the wounds. I knew what this war had cost, and I knew in my bones that Seraphine would make it worse. The metallic taste grew stronger. My eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the threat my gift was screaming about. There, in the gallery above. A figure in servant's clothes, but standing too still, hands hidden. Everything slowed down. The servant's arm rose. Sunlight glinted off silver. Silver bullet. The only thing that could kill an Alpha King. I didn't think. Thinking was for people who had time, who had choices. I ran. My feet hit marble, and I was nothing but momentum and terror. Alphas turned, startled by an Omega sprinting through their midst. Someone shouted. But I was already there, already throwing myself between Theron and the gallery. The impact came like thunder. Fire exploded through my chest, radiating outward in waves of agony. I heard the shot a split second later, or maybe I imagined it. The world tilted, and I was falling, the chandelier above me spinning like a crystal star. Strong arms caught me before I hit the ground. Theron's face filled my vision, those winter gray eyes wide with something I'd never seen there before. Shock. Maybe horror. What have you done? His voice was raw, nothing like the cold commander who ruled the summit. I tried to speak, but blood filled my mouth. Silver poisoning was already spreading through my veins, burning like acid. Around us, chaos erupted, guards rushing toward the gallery, alphas shouting orders, Seraphine's shrill voice demanding to know what happened. But Theron didn't move. He held me like I was made of glass. Stay with me. His command vibrated through his chest. That's an order. I almost laughed. As if my body would obey anyone's orders now, even an Alpha King's. His hand pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but we both knew it was useless. Silver didn't play by normal rules. It was already shutting down my organs, one by one. Why? The word broke from him. Why would you? You're nobody. You're Kira. My name came out as a whisper. Kira Ashwood. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? But that was impossible. He didn't know me. Nobody knew me. The healer, he said, and I realized he did know me, in the way kings knew their pieces. A name on a list. A function. The cold was setting in now, stealing the feeling from my fingers, my toes. I didn't have long. Maybe a minute. Maybe less. I needed to tell him. After years of watching, of knowing, of seeing the loneliness that shadowed him like a second skin, I needed him to know he hadn't been as alone as he thought. "I've always seen you, my king." The words came out softer than I meant, barely a breath. His entire body went rigid. Those gray eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time since I'd known him, from a distance, always from a distance, I saw the ice crack. "What did you say?" But the darkness was pulling at me, heavy and insistent. I tried to hold on, tried to stay in this moment just a little longer, but my gift was showing me my own death now. Fitting, really. Poetic. Kira. His voice turned desperate. "What do you mean you've seen me?" "How long?" He shook me gently, then harder. "How long have you been watching?" "Years." I barely managed the word. The truth was complicated, too complicated for dying breaths. How did I explain that I'd noticed him 3 winters ago, when he'd visited the healing ward after a border skirmish? He'd been checking on his wounded warriors, his face carved from stone, but his hands had been gentle when he'd gripped their shoulders. And his eyes, God, his eyes had been so empty. I'd seen him. Really seen him. The man inside the king. After that, I couldn't stop. I'd learned his routines, his habits. I knew he walked the battlements at midnight when he couldn't sleep. I knew he touched the old oak tree in the courtyard every morning, the one his mother had planted before she died. I knew he hated the throne room, preferred the library, and sometimes stood at his window for hours, just staring at the mountains. I knew he was lonely. And I knew, with the absolute certainty of my death sense, that Seraphine would destroy him. "You can't marry her." The words tumbled out, urgent despite the weakness dragging at me. "She'll, the war won't end. It'll." "Stop talking." His command was fierce. "You're not dying. I won't allow it." But even Alpha Kings couldn't command death. My vision was going dark around the edges. Theron's face blurred, then sharpened, then blurred again. I could hear Seraphine's voice, closer now, demanding to know why he was cradling a worthless Omega. Worthless. Yes. That's what I'd always been. Except when I looked at Theron, I'd never felt worthless. I'd felt seen. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. For dying? For interrupting his summit? For daring to love him from the shadows? No. His hand cupped my face, and I felt wetness on his cheeks. Was he crying? "No, Kira. Don't you dare." But the darkness swallowed his words, swallowed the light, swallowed everything. My last thought, as the world went black, was that at least I'd saved him. At least he would live. Even if he'd never be mine. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The Obsidian Temple hadn't been opened in 200 years. Theron kicked the iron doors hard enough to bend the ancient metal, not caring about the screech of protest or the way his council scrambled behind him, shouting warnings he had no intention of heeding. "Your Majesty, you cannot. The Omega is already dead, there's no point. The ritual is forbidden for a reason." He ignored them all. Kira's body was light in his arms, too light, and still warm enough to make his chest ache. Her blood had soaked through his formal jacket, sticky and accusing. That small face, so unremarkable he'd barely registered it before today, was peaceful now. Empty. She'd said she'd always seen him. Years, she'd said. Years. How had he not known? How had he walked past her, commanded her healing skills from a distance, attended councils and battles and pointless ceremonies, while she'd been watching? While she'd been seeing him? The temple's interior was exactly as the old texts described, black stone walls that seemed to swallow light, air thick with the kind of power that made his wolf pace anxiously. At the center stood an altar carved from a single piece of obsidian, its surface etched with runes that predated the werewolf kingdoms. Blood magic. Life magic. The kind of power the ancient wolves had wielded before they'd learned it came with a price too steep to pay. Theron. His second, Marcus, grabbed his arm. Think about what you're doing. The blood eternal ritual doesn't just resurrect, it binds. Forever. You'll be tied to her for the rest of your immortal life. You can't undo it. You can't break it. I know what it does. Do you? Marcus's voice dropped. You'll feel everything she feels. Pain, fear, joy. If she dies, you die. If you die, she dies. It's not a gift, it's a curse. And for what? An Omega you barely know? Theron laid Kira gently on the altar. Her dark hair spilled across the black stone, and her hand, small, calloused from work, fell limply to the side. He picked it up, held it. She knew, he said quietly. She saw the assassin. She saw the silver bullet meant for my heart, and she didn't hesitate. She threw herself in front of it. She's a healer. Maybe it was instinct. No. Theron's voice hardened. She said she'd always seen me. Years, Marcus. This wasn't instinct. This was. He trailed off, unable to name what it was. Loyalty? Devotion? Something deeper, something that had been growing in the shadows while he'd been trapped in duty and politics and loneliness? Footsteps echoed through the temple. Seraphine swept in, her red dress a slash of color against the darkness, her beautiful face twisted with rage. What is the meaning of this? Her voice could have cut glass. You abandoned the summit, abandoned me, to bring a dead servant to this cursed place? She saved my life. So what? Give her a medal. Build her a monument. Don't. Seraphine's eyes narrowed as she took in the altar, the runes, the position of Kira's body. No. No, you wouldn't dare. Get out. Theron's command was cold and absolute. Our wedding is in 3 days. 3 days, Theron. Do you know what I've sacrificed for this alliance? What my pack has sacrificed? If you perform this ritual, if you bind yourself to some nobody Omega, you'll destroy everything. I said get out. Power rolled off him in waves, filling the temple, pressing against everyone present. Seraphine stumbled back, her own alpha aura flaring in response, but it was nothing compared to his. He was the Alpha King, and right now, his wolf was done with patience. This will mean war, she hissed. My father won't let this insult stand. None of the packs will. You'll have blood on your hands. Then let there be war. He turned his back on her, dismissing her like she was nothing. Because compared to the cooling body on the altar, compared to the Omega who'd seen him when he'd thought himself invisible, she was nothing. He heard Seraphine leave, her furious footsteps fading. Marcus and the others remained, frozen. All of you. Out. Now. Sir. That's an order. They went. Even Marcus, though his face showed clearly he thought his king had gone insane. Maybe he had. Maybe watching Kira die in his arms had broken something fundamental in him, some last piece of control he'd been clinging to. Alone now, Theron pulled the obsidian blade from its resting place beneath the altar. The handle was warm, almost alive. The runes on the blade matched those on the altar, ancient words in a language only alphas learned, and only then as a warning. He knew what this would cost. The ritual required his blood, his life force, his very essence poured into the void where Kira's soul had fled. It would tie them together so completely that separation would be impossible. If she lived 500 years, so would he. If he died in battle, so would she. And there was another cost, one the texts mentioned only in footnotes: the resurrected would return changed. Stronger. Marked. Claimed. She would bear his bite, the ultimate symbol of an alpha's mate, visible to every werewolf who saw her. There would be no hiding what he'd done, no political maneuvering to smooth it over. He would be declaring war for an Omega he barely knew. Except he did know her, he realized. Maybe not her favorite color or how she took her tea, but he knew the important thing: she'd seen him. The real him. The lonely man inside the Alpha King's armor. That was worth more than any political alliance. Theron raised the blade and cut across his palm, deep enough that blood welled immediately. He placed his bleeding hand over Kira's heart, over the silver-poisoned wound that had stolen her life. The words of the ritual came from somewhere old, somewhere deep in his wolf's memory. They tasted like copper and smoke. By blood and bone, by moon and stone, I bind my life to yours. My breath is your breath. My death is your death. Return from the Shadowlands. Return to me. The temple shuddered. The runes on the altar blazed with red light, hot enough that he had to squint. His blood sank into Kira's skin, absorbed like water into parched earth, and something grabbed hold of his life force and pulled. Pain exploded through him. It felt like his soul was being ripped out through his chest, stretched thin, sent hurtling through darkness towards something far away. He gasped, nearly collapsing, but forced himself to stay upright, to keep his hand pressed to her heart. The ritual demanded everything. He gave it. He poured his strength into the void, his power, his immortal lifespan. The centuries he had left, he offered them all, split them in half, sent them spiraling toward wherever Kira's soul had fled. Come back, he commanded, putting every ounce of his alpha authority into it. Come back to me. For a moment, nothing happened. The light faded. His hand was still on cold flesh. He'd failed. Kira's body arched off the altar with a gasp that echoed through the temple. Theron caught her before she could fall, pulling her against his chest as she convulsed, coughing, her hands clutching at him with newfound strength that actually hurt. Her eyes flew open, and they weren't the soft brown they'd been before. They glowed amber, wolf-bright, though she was Omega. Easy, he murmured, even as his own body shook from the drain of the ritual. Easy, I've got you. She blinked rapidly, confusion flooding her face. Her hand went to her chest, to where the wound had been. The skin was smooth now, unmarked except for a silver scar that matched exactly where his hand had been. Her voice was rough, amused. I died. I remember dying. You did. But she looked up at him, and something in her gaze made his wolf surge forward, possessive and fierce. She was his now. Bound to him. His. Then she gasped, her hand flying to her neck. To the left side, where his bite mark now gleamed like molten silver just beneath her skin. What did you do? The question was barely a whisper. The blood eternal ritual. He helped her sit up, steadying her when she swayed. I brought you back. You, she stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. You can't just, do you know what you've done? The alliance, the wedding, the peace. Are all less important than your life. That's insane. She tried to push away from him, but her legs wouldn't hold her yet. She was stronger than she'd been, he could feel it through the bond already forming between them, but resurrection took time to settle. I'm nobody. I'm an Omega healer who saw me. He caught her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You said you've always seen me. How long, Kira? How long have you been watching? Color flooded her cheeks. I shouldn't have said that. I was dying, I wasn't thinking. How long? 3 years, she admitted, the words pulled from her like a confession. 3 years since you visited the healing ward after the border skirmish. You were checking on your warriors and I saw you. Really saw you. And after that I couldn't stop noticing things. The way you touch the oak tree in the courtyard every morning. How you walk the battlements at midnight. How you hate the throne room but love the library. Theron's chest tightened. 3 years. She'd been there, watching, caring from a distance, while he'd been drowning in duty and loneliness. I knew too, he said softly. Her eyes widened. What? Not consciously. But my wolf knew. Every time you were near, he'd settle. I'd catch your scent, honeysuckle and healing herbs, and something in me would ease. I told myself it was nothing. I had Seraphine, the Alliance, responsibilities. But my wolf knew. Theron. I've started a war for you. He said it plainly, not apologizing. Seraphine's pack will retaliate. The other alphas will see this as an insult. Everything will fall apart. Then undo it. She grabbed his jacket, desperate. There has to be a way to undo the ritual. There isn't. We're bound now, Kira. Forever. And I don't want to undo it. Before she could respond, her eyes rolled back and she convulsed in his arms again. He held her tight, alarmed, but this seemed different from the resurrection. She wasn't dying, she was seeing something. When her eyes cleared, they were wild with terror. The in-between, she gasped. When I was dead, I was in this place, this realm between life and death. Gray and cold and endless. But I wasn't alone. Her fingers dug into his arms hard enough to bruise. I saw them, Theron. I saw the traitor. Every muscle in his body locked. What? The assassin didn't act alone. Someone in your inner circle hired them. Someone close to you. Her voice shook. I saw their face in the in-between, like a reflection in dark water. They were there, watching, making sure I was really dead so I couldn't warn you. Who? The word came out as a growl. Who was it? But before she could answer, the temple doors burst open. Marcus rushed in, his face ashen. Sir, we have a problem. Seraphine's father just arrived with 500 warriors. They're demanding your head for the insult to his daughter. He paused, taking in Kira's very much alive state and the glowing claim mark on her neck. And based on that mark, I'm guessing they're going to get even more demanding. Theron stood, lifting Kira easily despite her protests that she could walk. Through the bond, he could feel her fear, her guilt, her certainty that she wasn't worth the chaos he'd unleashed. She was wrong. She'd thrown herself in front of a silver bullet for him without hesitation. She'd watched over him for 3 years, seeing the man beneath the crown. She'd come back from death with information about a traitor in his midst. If that wasn't worth fighting for, nothing was. Let them come, he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. But first, we find out who the traitor is. Kira saw them in the in-between. Marcus's eyes went sharp. She can identify them? Kira's voice was small in his arms. I think so. But Theron, what if I'm wrong? What if what I saw wasn't real? I don't want to accuse someone if. Your gift has never been wrong before. He looked down at her, this small Omega who'd somehow become the center of his entire world in the span of an afternoon. Has it? She shook her head slowly. Her death sense had always been accurate. Terrifyingly so. Then we'll find them, Theron said. We'll root out the traitor, and we'll deal with Seraphine's father. Together. Together, she repeated, like she couldn't quite believe it. Like she was still trying to understand that she was no longer invisible, no longer alone. That the Alpha King himself had bound his life to hers. Through the bond, Theron felt her fear spike again, not of the coming war, but of something deeper. Of not being enough. Of being the Omega nobody who'd somehow started a war. He pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture more intimate than any kiss. You're worth it, he murmured against her skin. You're worth all of it. And I'm going to spend however long we have proving that to you. Even if it took centuries. Even if it cost him everything. She'd seen him when no one else had, and now he'd make sure she understood. He saw her too. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. Kira woke to the taste of blood in her mouth and Theron's rage burning through her veins like wildfire. Except it wasn't her mouth, and it wasn't her rage. She bolted upright in the massive four-poster bed, his bed, in his chambers, where he'd insisted she stay despite her protests, and pressed her hand to her chest. Her heart was racing, but not from fear. From fury. From the need to hunt, to kill, to tear apart whatever had dared. The door slammed open. Theron strode in, his shirt torn and blood-stained, his eyes still glowing amber with his wolf's presence. 3 guards followed, looking grim. What happened? Kira threw off the silk sheets, suddenly aware she was wearing only one of his shirts. It fell to mid-thigh, and under normal circumstances she'd be mortified. But through the bond, she could feel his fury hadn't dimmed, and her own heart was still hammering with borrowed adrenaline. Another assassin. His voice was clipped, controlled, but she felt the violence churning beneath. 3rd one this week. They're getting bolder. It had been 5 days since her resurrection. 5 days of chaos. Seraphine's father, Alpha Maddox, had surrounded the castle with his warriors, demanding Theron's head or his daughter's honor restored. The other pack leaders were choosing sides. Half thought Theron had dishonored an alliance and deserved punishment. The other half were waiting to see who'd win before committing. And through it all, assassins kept coming. Were you hurt? She was already moving toward him, her hands reaching for his torn shirt before she could think better of it. The healer in her, now amplified by whatever the resurrection had done, needed to assess, to fix, to make sure he was whole. I'm fine. But he didn't stop her when she pushed his shirt aside, revealing smooth skin where she could have sworn she'd felt a wound through the bond. I heal fast. Not that fast. Her fingers traced where the injury should have been. Through the bond, she'd felt the blades sink in, felt his pain as clearly as if it were her own. You were stabbed. I felt it. Something flickered in his eyes. The bond is getting stronger. It was. Every day, the connection between them deepened. She'd wake up craving coffee even though she preferred tea, because he wanted coffee. He'd absently hum songs she'd been singing in the healing ward. Yesterday, she'd reached for a book and somehow known it was one of his favorites before opening it. The intimacy of it terrified her. Your Majesty, one of the guards said carefully. The prisoner is ready for interrogation. Good. Theron's jaw clenched. Maybe this one will actually talk before dying. The previous assassins had all taken poison the moment they were captured. Someone had trained them well, made sure they'd never give up their employer. But Kira had felt this one's death approaching, had warned Theron seconds before the assassin could swallow the false tooth filled with nightshade. Her death sense had always been reliable, now it was overwhelming. She could sense mortality on everyone she passed, like a countdown clock only she could see. It was exhausting. And useful. I'm coming with you, she said. No. Theron. You're staying here where it's safe. His tone brooked no argument. Marcus will post guards outside. No one gets in. The rage that flared through her was entirely her own this time. I'm not some delicate flower you need to lock in a tower. In case you forgot, I threw myself in front of a silver bullet for you. Which is exactly why I won't risk you again. You don't get to make that choice. I'm the Alpha King. I make all the choices. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with power and expectation. Kira felt something inside her recoil, the Omega part that was supposed to submit, to accept an Alpha's will without question. But she died. She'd been resurrected. And whatever the blood eternal ritual had done to her, it had burned away her ability to simply roll over. Then you're a fool, she said quietly. Because that traitor I saw in the in-between? They're in your inner circle, Theron. Close enough to know your schedules, your routines, your weaknesses. And you're going to interrogate an assassin without the one person who can sense when they're about to die rather than talk. His eyes narrowed. Through the bond, she felt his frustration war with logic. Logic won. Fine, he bit out. But you stay behind me. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Perfectly. She grabbed a pair of leather pants and a tunic from the wardrobe he'd had filled with clothes in her size. When she'd asked where they came from, he'd simply said he'd noticed her measurements over the years. She tried not to think too hard about what that meant. The dungeons beneath the castle were old stone and iron, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows. The assassin was chained to a chair in the center of the interrogation room, their face covered by a black mask. Marcus was already there, along with Alara, the head healer who'd trained Kira and who'd been surprisingly cold since the resurrection, and Demon, Theron's half-brother. Kira had met Demon only twice before today. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, with Theron's gray eyes but lighter hair and a smile that never seemed genuine. He'd been away on border patrol during the summit, returning just in time to witness the chaos his brother had unleashed. "Brother," Demon said now, his tone carefully neutral. "I still think this is a mistake. You should let me handle the interrogation. You're too close to this." "I'm exactly as close as I need to be." Theron moved to stand in front of the assassin. "Remove the mask." Marcus did, revealing a young man barely out of his teens. His eyes were glassy with fear, but his jaw was set with determination. "Name," Theron commanded, his alpha voice pressing down like a physical weight. The young man's mouth opened, compelled by the command, but no sound came out. He was fighting it, hard enough that blood trickled from his nose. "He's been conditioned," Alara observed clinically. "Someone's put a compulsion on him. He literally can't speak certain truths." Kira stepped forward, ignoring Theron's warning growl. She reached out with her death sense, feeling for the young man's mortality. There, a countdown, but it was wrong. Too fast. Too immediate. "He's going to die," she said urgently. "Not from poison. From the compulsion. Whoever did this rigged it so that if he tries to speak, his heart will stop." "Can you tell when?" Marcus demanded. She focused harder, and the bond with Theron flared. Suddenly his strength was hers, amplifying her gift. The countdown became clearer. 3 minutes if we keep pushing. Maybe less. Damn it. Theron paced, his frustration palpable. "Can we break the compulsion?" "Not in 3 minutes," Alara said. "That kind of dark magic takes time to unravel. Hours, maybe days. Then we don't ask him to speak." Kira moved closer to the assassin, crouching down to meet his eyes. "You can't tell us who hired you. But you can show us." She held out her hand. "I'm going to touch you. When I do, think about the person who hired you. Picture their face. I can't break the compulsion, but my gift doesn't work through words, it works through touch, through feeling." It was a gamble. Her death sense had never worked this way before. But she was different now, changed by the resurrection, and she could feel new abilities stirring beneath her skin like sleeping serpents. The young man stared at her hand, then at Theron. "If you help us," Theron said quietly, "I'll grant you mercy. A quick death, painless. You'll be buried with honor instead of dumped in a mass grave. You have my word." A long pause. Then the assassin extended his shaking hand. The moment Kira's skin touched his, the world exploded into sensation. She saw a darkened room, rich fabrics, the scent of expensive wine. A figure in the shadows, their face obscured but their voice clear, "Kill the Alpha King. The Omega 2, if she survives." Gold exchanging hands. The assassin nodding, accepting the mission, not knowing he was signing his own death warrant. The face. She needed to see the face. Kira pushed deeper, using the bond with Theron to amplify her power, and the shadows peeled back. Demon. It was Demon in that darkened room. Kira gasped and released the assassin's hand, stumbling backward. Theron caught her instantly, his arms tight around her waist. "What did you see?" he demanded. She opened her mouth to answer, but something stopped her. Not the assassin's compulsion, something else. A whisper in the back of her mind, cold and hungry. "Not yet. Not here. They're listening." Her eyes snapped to the corners of the room, and for just a moment, she saw them. Shadow things, darker than darkness, clinging to the walls like mold. They hadn't been there a moment ago. Or maybe they had, and she'd only just learned to see them. The entities from the in-between. She'd brought them back with her. Kira. Theron's voice was urgent now. Through the bond, he felt her sudden terror. She swallowed hard, dragging her eyes from the shadows. The young assassin was slumped in his chair, blood now pouring from his nose and ears. His heart had given out. She'd been too late. Think. She needed to think. If Demon was the traitor, then telling Theron now, in front of him, would be suicide. Demon was fast, powerful, and had guards loyal to him. She needed proof. She needed time. I saw the room where he was hired, she said carefully. But not the face. They were hidden. It wasn't quite a lie. The face had been hidden, until she'd pushed deeper. Theron's eyes searched hers, and she felt his suspicion through the bond. He knew she was holding something back. But before he could push, Marcus spoke up. "We've had 4 more deaths," he said grimly. Pack members found drained in their beds. No marks, no wounds. They just died. The healers can't explain it. Elara nodded, her face troubled. It's like something sucked the life right out of them. I've never seen anything like it. Kira's stomach dropped. The shadow things. They weren't just following her, they were feeding. When did this start? She asked, though she already knew the answer. 5 days ago, Marcus said. Right after your resurrection. Every eye in the room turned to her. You think I did this? The accusation stung, even though part of her knew it was true. Not directly, but... I didn't mean to, I didn't know. No one's accusing you, Theron said sharply, but his hand on her back was tense. Through the bond, she felt his concern. His fear for her. But it is connected to her, Demon said, and there was something in his voice. Satisfaction? She came back wrong, brother. You performed forbidden magic, and now pack members are dying. How many more have to perish before you admit you made a mistake? Careful, Theron's voice dropped to a lethal purr. That's my mate you're speaking about. Is she? Demon's eyes glittered. Or is she a monster wearing an Omega's face? Maybe the kindest thing would be to. Theron moved faster than thought, slamming Demon against the stone wall hard enough to crack it. His hand was around his brother's throat, claws extended, and his wolf was right there beneath his skin. Finish that sentence, Theron growled. I dare you. Through the bond, Kira felt his rage, his fear, his desperate need to protect her. But she also felt something else, doubt. A tiny seed of it, wondering if Demon was right. It hurt worse than the silver bullet. Stop, she said quietly. Theron didn't move. Theron, please. Let him go. It took visible effort, but he released Demon, who slumped against the wall, gasping. We need to find out what's killing the pack members, Kira said, forcing her voice to stay steady even though she wanted to scream. And we need to identify the traitor. Everything else can wait. Everything else? Theron spun to face her. Your safety is not everything else, Kira. I won't lose you. You won't have a choice if those shadow things keep feeding. The words burst out before she could stop them. I saw them. Just now, in the corners of this room. They followed me back from the in-between, and they're draining pack members at night. I brought them here, Theron. This is my fault. Silence fell like a hammer. You can see them? Elara stepped forward, her expression sharp with interest. These entities? Sometimes. They're like shadows that are too dark, too thick. They hide in corners and under beds and anywhere the light doesn't quite reach. Kira wrapped her arms around herself. In the in-between, they were everywhere. I thought I'd left them behind, but I was wrong. Can you kill them? Marcus asked practically. I don't know. I don't even know what they are. I do, Demon said, rubbing his throat. He'd regained his composure, his expression carefully blank now. They're called soul leeches. Parasites from the death realm that feed on life force. The old texts say they're attracted to resurrection magic like moths to flame. How do we get rid of them? Theron demanded. You can't. Demon's eyes found Kira's. Once they've latched onto someone, they follow until either the host dies, or until they've drained enough souls to create a portal back to their realm. Usually takes about 24 deaths. 24. They'd only lost 4 so far. There has to be another way, Theron said. There is. Ilara's voice was cold. The host severs their connection to this world. Permanently. She meant death. Kira's death. No. Theron's voice was absolute. We'll find another way. Brother, be reasonable. I said no. Power exploded from him, pressing down on everyone in the room. We'll hunt these things. We'll trap them. We'll find a way to send them back without killing Kira. And how many pack members die while you're playing hero? Demon shot back. How many lives is one Omega worth? Through the bond, Kira felt Theron's answer, all of them. It should have been romantic. Instead, it was terrifying. I need air, she said, and fled before anyone could stop her. She made it to the castle's east tower before Theron caught up. She was standing at the window, staring out at the moonlit grounds, when she felt him approach. Don't, she said before he could speak. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Don't tell me you'll fix this. Don't. I was going to ask if you're all right. I'm not. She turned to face him, and everything she'd been holding in came pouring out. I'm not all right, Theron. I'm a monster. I brought death back with me, and now pack members are dying, and you. You're ready to sacrifice everything for me. Again. How many people have to suffer before you realize I'm not worth it? Stop. He crossed to her in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. Stop talking like that. Why? It's true. You could have let me die. You could have married Seraphine and had peace. Instead you performed forbidden magic, started a war, and now we have shadow monsters draining your pack. All because of me. All because I love you. The words hit her like a physical blow. You don't, she whispered. You can't. You barely know me. I've known you for 3 years. His hands moved to cup her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Maybe I didn't consciously see you before, but my wolf did. Every time you were near, I felt calmer. Safer. Like I could finally breathe. I ignored it because of duty, because I thought I had to marry Seraphine, because I didn't think I deserved to want something for myself. Theron. When you died in my arms, I didn't think. I just acted. And if you're asking me to regret that, I can't. I won't. Yes, there are consequences. Yes, we're dealing with things we don't understand. But I'd rather face all of it with you than spend another day in that cold, empty existence I called life. Tears burned her eyes. What if it's not love? What if it's just the bond making you feel this way? Then I felt it before the bond. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. I felt it when you died. I felt it when I carried you to the obsidian temple. The ritual didn't create what I feel, Kira. It just made it impossible to ignore. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to so badly. But through the bond, she could feel his fear. His worry. His doubt about whether she'd survive what was coming. You're afraid, she said softly. He didn't deny it. Terrified. Of losing you. Of failing my pack. Of discovering I can't protect everyone I love. Then don't lock me away. She gripped his wrists, holding his hands in place. Don't make me your caged bird. Let me help. Let me fight. I may have brought the soul leeches back, but maybe that means I can send them away too. Or it means they'll kill you first. Then they'll kill you too. That's how the bond works, remember? She managed a weak smile. Guess you'll have to make sure we both survive. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together, he said, echoing her words from the temple. Together. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, and through the bond she felt everything he couldn't say. The fear, yes, but also the hope. The determination. The love he'd claimed to feel. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. There's something else, she said quietly. Something I need to tell you. But not here. Somewhere private, where we can't be overheard. His eyes sharpened. You did see the traitor's face. She nodded. Who? She glanced at the doorway, at the shadows pooling in the corners. Were they soul leeches? Or just regular darkness? She couldn't tell anymore. Not here, she repeated. Please. Understanding flickered across his face. If she was this careful, the traitor had to be close. Very close. My chambers, he said. We'll ward them. No one gets in, and no one can listen. As they walked back through the castle halls, Kira felt the weight of eyes on them. Pack members watched with expressions ranging from hope to hatred. Some saw their Alpha King's mate. Others saw the Omega who'd broken an alliance and brought monsters to their door. She didn't know which was worse. But she did know one thing: when she told Theron that his brother was trying to kill him, everything would change. The hunt for the traitor would become a hunt for family. And blood, she'd learned, was always the hardest kind to spill. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The castle was dying. Kira could feel it in the stone itself, the way the walls seemed colder each morning, the way shadows lingered in places where sunlight should reach. 3 more pack members had been found drained in their beds last night, bringing the total to 7. The soul leeches were getting stronger. And the pack was fracturing. She stood at Theron's side in the great hall, watching as alpha warriors shouted over each other, their voices echoing off vaulted ceilings that had witnessed centuries of councils. Half demanded Theron honor his commitment to Seraphine. The other half defended their king's choice, though their eyes kept drifting to Kira with barely concealed doubt. You've damned us all. Alpha Hrothgar slammed his fist on the table. 4 packs have already withdrawn their allegiance. Seraphine's forces have surrounded the castle. And these things you brought back are draining our people dry. Watch your tone, Theron's voice was ice. You're speaking about my mate. Your mistake, you mean. Hrothgar's lip curled. An Omega who should have stayed dead. The room erupted. Wolves who'd served Theron for decades were suddenly at each other's throats, and through the bond, Kira felt Theron's control fraying like worn rope. She tried to tell him about Demon last night, in his warded chambers. But before she could speak, Marcus had burst in with news of another attack, this time on the outer walls. Seraphine's forces had started their siege. They hadn't had a private moment since. Now Marcus stood at the war table, his expression grim as he pointed to a map. They hit us at dawn. 60 warriors, well armed. We repelled them, but it cost us. And they'll come again tonight, when the soul leeches are most active. It's strategy, said Demon, who'd somehow positioned himself at Theron's right hand. Seraphine's using the chaos to her advantage. While we're fighting shadows, she weakens our defenses. Kira's eyes fixed on him. He looked so earnest, so concerned. But she'd seen his face in that darkened room, hiring the assassin. She'd felt his betrayal through the young man's memories. Why hadn't she told Theron yet? Because she was afraid. Afraid of what it would do to him to learn his own brother wanted him dead. Afraid she was wrong, that somehow her new abilities had shown her false visions. Afraid that if she accused Demon without proof, he'd find a way to kill her before she could stop him. "We need to end this siege," Theron said. "And we need to deal with the soul leeches. Those are our priorities." "The soul leeches won't stop until they've fed enough to open a portal," Alara spoke up from her position near the healers. "Unless we sever their connection to this realm." "How?" Theron demanded. Alara's eyes found Kira's. "The one who brought them back must send them away. It requires entering the death realm consciously, finding the tear between worlds, and sealing it from the inside." "That's suicide," Marcus said flatly. "Not necessarily." Alara's voice remained clinical. "If done correctly, the host can return. But the process would sever any magical bonds tying them to this world. Including mate bonds." The room went silent. Kira felt the blood drain from her face. Sever the bond? That would mean. No. Theron's voice cut through the quiet. Absolutely not. Your Majesty, be reasonable. I said no. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Hrothgar stood, his chair scraping against stone. How many have to die for your selfishness? How many pack members are worth 1 Omega? All of them. Theron's power filled the room, pressing down on every wolf present. And if you question my decision again, Hrothgar, you'll find yourself in the dungeons. The Alpha sat down, but resentment burned in his eyes. Kira's chest felt tight. Through the bond, she could feel Theron's determination, his refusal to even consider losing her. But she could also feel something else, a thread of doubt, thin as spider silk, wondering if everyone else was right. We need to focus on the siege, Demon interjected smoothly. Brother, let me lead a night raid. We can hit Seraphine's supply lines, force them to pull back. Too risky. Then what do you suggest? We can't sit here and wait for them to starve us out. As they argued strategy, Kira felt her death sense suddenly flare. Not a warning, something different. A pull, like a hook in her chest, dragging her attention toward the east tower. Something was calling to her. She slipped out of the hall while the Alphas debated troop movements. No one noticed her leave except Marcus, whose eyes tracked her departure with an expression she couldn't read. The east tower was where she'd fled last night, where Theron had found her and confessed his love. Now, as she climbed the spiral stairs, she felt the temperature drop with each step. Her breath misted in the air. The soul leeches were stronger here. She reached the top and stopped. The circular room was thick with shadows that moved wrong, that breathed. They clustered in the corners and crawled across the ceiling like living smoke. And in the center stood a figure in a dark cloak. Kira's hand went to the knife at her belt, another gift from Theron, who refused to let her walk around unarmed anymore. Who are you? She demanded. The figure turned. When they pulled back their hood, Kira's blood turned to ice. It was Alara. But wrong. Her eyes were completely black, like pools of oil, and when she smiled, her teeth were too sharp. Hello, little Omega. Her voice echoed strangely. We've been waiting for you. We? The leeches. The shadows. The things that hunger. Alara, or whatever was wearing her face, tilted her head. Did you really think you came back alone? We hitched a ride, little Resurrection. You opened the door between worlds, and we walked right through. Kira's grip tightened on her knife. Where's the real Alara? Right here. Asleep. Dreaming. We needed a body that could get close to you, close to the Alpha King. Alara was perfect, respected, trusted, allowed in your innermost circles. The thing smiled wider. We've learned so much. What do you want? What we've always wanted. To feed. To grow. To consume. It took a step closer, and the shadows around it writhed. But you've made things interesting. You didn't just open a door, little Omega. You fulfilled a prophecy. I don't know what you're. The Alpha who loves will bring about the great devouring. The words echoed with power. Your mate's bloodline has carried a curse for 500 years. His ancestors made a pact with the Death Realm, power in exchange for isolation. No Alpha of his line could ever take a true mate, bound by love and magic. If they did, the veil between worlds would tear, and we would feast. Kira's heart hammered. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why Theron's father died alone. Why his grandfather never took a mate. Why every Alpha in his bloodline for centuries has ruled in solitude. The thing that wore Alara's face laughed. They knew. They all knew. And they chose duty over love, power over connection, because they understood the cost. Theron doesn't know. He wouldn't have. Of course he doesn't know. The knowledge was suppressed, hidden in texts that were burned, whispered in warnings that became legend. It circled her slowly. But someone knew. Someone tried to stop him before he could trigger the prophecy. Someone hired assassins, tried to kill him before he could resurrect you. Demon's face flashed through Kira's mind. But this thing said someone was trying to save Theron. Marcus, she breathed. Smart girl. The thing's smile was grotesque. The beta who knew the old stories. Who tried to prevent his Alpha from dooming the world. Who failed. This is insane. There has to be a way to stop it. There is. The thing's black eyes gleamed. Theron rejects the mate bond. You die. The prophecy is broken, the door closes, and we return to our realm, hungry and disappointed. He won't do that. Then we feed until we're strong enough to tear the veil completely. We'll devour this pack, then the next, then the next. We'll consume every living thing until this world is nothing but shadows and bones. It leaned close, its borrowed breath cold on her face. Either way, little Omega, you lose. Before Kira could respond, the door burst open. Marcus stood there, sword drawn, his face pale. Get away from her, he shouted. The thing hissed and melted into shadows, disappearing into the corners. Marcus grabbed Kira's arm and dragged her toward the stairs. We need to get you to Theron. Now. Marcus, wait, she pulled against his grip. You're the traitor. You hired the assassins. He stopped, his shoulders sagging. Yes. Why? Because I knew what would happen if Theron completed the blood eternal ritual. His voice was raw with anguish. I found the texts, Kira. Hidden in the oldest part of the library, written in blood. The curse is real. Every Alpha in Theron's line has sacrificed love to keep the world safe. And I tried, God, I tried to stop him before he could trigger it. By killing him? By killing him quickly. A silver bullet to the heart, instant death, no suffering. It would have looked like Seraphine's doing. The alliance would have held. The prophecy would have remained dormant. He turned to face her, and she saw tears in his eyes. But you saved him. And then he saved you. And now we're all damned. There has to be another way. There isn't. His shout echoed in the stairwell. I've spent every night since your resurrection searching for alternatives. There are none. Either Theron rejects the bond and lets you die, or the soul leeches consume everything. Kira felt sick. Does Theron know? About the curse? Not yet. I've been trying to find proof, something concrete to show him. But the texts are gone, someone burned them. All I have are fragments, stories, warnings that sound like superstition. His laugh was bitter. I tried to save my Alpha by becoming his enemy. How's that for loyalty? They stood in the stairwell, the weight of impossible choices crushing down on them both. We tell him, Kira said finally. We tell him everything. The curse, your involvement, what that thing said. He deserves to know. And then what? You think he'll choose the world over you? Marcus shook his head. I've served Theron for 20 years. I know him. He'll choose you every time, consequences be damned. Then we make the choice for him. You can't. I can. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was breaking. I'll find a way into the death realm. I'll seal the tear, sever the bond, and end this. That's suicide. So is doing nothing. A horn blared from outside, the warning signal. Attack. Marcus cursed. Seraphine's forces. They're hitting us again. They ran down the stairs together, emerging into chaos. The castle grounds were flooded with warriors, steel clashing against steel. Fire bloomed in the darkness, not from torches, but from dark magic, Seraphine's specialty. And everywhere, shadows moved. The soul leeches were feeding on the dying, growing stronger with each life they consumed. Kira spotted Theron in the thick of it, his sword flashing as he cut down attackers. Through the bond, she felt his rage, his fear for her, his desperate need to end this siege and get back to protecting her. She started toward him, but something grabbed her from behind. Demon. Let go. She struggled, but his grip was iron. Sorry, little Omega. His voice was cold in her ear. But you're too valuable to leave wandering around a battlefield. He dragged her toward the west wing, away from the fighting. Kira screamed for Theron through the bond, but he was too far away, too focused on battle to hear her mental cry. Demon pulled her into a darkened corridor and slammed her against the wall. You saw, didn't you? He said quietly. In that assassin's memories. You saw my face. Yes. Then you know I'm the real traitor. Not Marcus, though he's been helpful, creating a convenient scapegoat with his misguided heroics. Kira's mind raced. The curse. You know about it. Of course I know about it. I'm the one who found the texts. I'm the one who's been planning this for years. His smile was sharp. You think I wanted to live in my brother's shadow forever? The perfect Alpha King, beloved by all, destined for greatness? I'm the older son, Kira. I should have inherited the throne. But our father chose Theron because I was too ambitious, too hungry for power. So you tried to kill him. I tried to trigger the prophecy. His eyes glittered. I knew about the curse, about what would happen if Theron took a true mate. So I waited. I watched. And when I saw how he looked at you, even before he consciously knew it himself, I knew I had my chance. You orchestrated everything. The summit, the assassination attempt. I wanted you to save him. I wanted him to fall so desperately in love that he'd perform the blood eternal ritual without thinking. And it worked perfectly. He leaned close. Now the soul leeches will consume the pack, Theron will be blamed for dooming everyone, and I'll step in as the savior. All I have to do is eliminate the mate bond, by killing you, and I'll be hailed as the hero who stopped the great devouring. Theron will never forgive you. Theron will be dead. Demon pulled out a knife, its blade dark with poison. Because when I kill you, the bond will kill him too. 2 problems solved. He raised the knife, and Kira knew her death sense should be screaming. But it was silent, confused, because she could feel Theron's life force tangled so completely with hers that his death and hers had become the same event. The blade descended. A sword burst through Demon's chest. He gasped, blood bubbling from his lips, and crumpled. Behind him stood Marcus, his face twisted with grief. I'm sorry, Marcus said, not to Demon but to the empty air. I'm so sorry it came to this. Footsteps pounded down the corridor. Theron appeared, covered in blood, his eyes wild. Kira. He pulled her into his arms, checking her for injuries. Through the bond, she felt his terror, his relief, his rage at finding his brother's body on the floor. What happened? He demanded. Marcus met his alpha's eyes. Demon was the traitor. He tried to kill your mate. I stopped him. Why? The question was barely a whisper. And then Kira heard it, voices from around the corner. Theron's war council, moving toward them. We need to tell him, Kira said to Marcus. Now. Before. But it was too late. Elara appeared at the head of the council, her eyes normal now, whatever had possessed her apparently gone. She took in the scene. Demon dead, Marcus holding a bloody sword, Kira in Theron's arms. Your Majesty, she said carefully. I need to speak with you. Privately. It's about the curse. Theron stiffened. What curse? Elara's eyes were full of pity. The one your bloodline has carried for 500 years. The one that states an alpha who loves will bring about the great devouring. She paused. I've been researching since Lady Kira's resurrection. I found fragments of texts, and I finally understand what's happening. The soul leeches, the attacks, all of it, it's connected to your mate bond. Explain. But Kira felt Theron's hand tighten on her arm, felt his dread through the bond. He knew. Somehow, he already knew what Elara was going to say. There's only one solution, Elara continued, her voice gentle but firm. You must reject the mate bond. Completely and permanently. Let Lady Kira die again, this time permanently, before the prophecy fully manifests. Silence fell in the corridor. Kira waited for Theron to refuse, to rage, to declare there had to be another way. But he said nothing. Through the bond, she felt his anguish, his horror, his desperate search for alternatives even as he realized there were none. She felt him weighing her life against the lives of everyone in his pack, everyone in the kingdom, everyone in the world. And she felt the moment his alpha duty warred with his heart and duty began to win. No, she whispered. Theron, no. How long do we have? His voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of a king making an impossible choice. A day, maybe two, before the soul leeches are strong enough to tear the veil completely, Elara said. After that, nothing will stop them. Kira pulled away from him, stumbling back. You're actually considering this. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Theron, look at me. Finally, he did. And what she saw in his face destroyed her. Resignation. Grief. And underneath it all, a terrible, crushing sense of duty. There are 15,000 wolves in this pack, he said quietly. 7 kingdoms that look to me for protection. Millions of lives that will be consumed if his voice broke. I can't choose you over all of them, Kira. I can't. The bond between them shredded, not severed but torn by his words. Kira felt like she was dying all over again, but slower this time, more painfully. I saved you, she whispered. I threw myself in front of a silver bullet for you. I know. You said you loved me. I do. God help me, I do. Then fight for me. Her voice cracked. Fight for us. There has to be another way. There isn't. Tears ran down his face, and through the bond she felt them like acid in her own eyes. I've looked. We've all looked. This is the only way to stop it. Then let me go into the death realm myself. Let me seal the tear from the inside. That's suicide. So is this. He reached for her, but she jerked away. Don't touch me. Her voice was cold now, numb. Don't you dare touch me while you're planning to kill me. Kira. How long have you known, she demanded. About the curse? About what our bond would cause? I didn't know. Not until just now. Liar. She felt it through the bond, the lie, small but significant. You suspected. You felt something was wrong. That's why you've been so desperate to keep me locked away, to protect me. Not from assassins. From the consequences of your own choice. His silence was answer enough. Kira looked at the faces surrounding them, Marcus, grief-stricken, Elara, clinically sympathetic, the other council members, some relieved that their king was finally seeing reason. Not one of them was fighting for her. She was alone. I need air, she said, her voice distant. Kira, we need to discuss. Discuss what? How you're going to murder me. What method will be kindest? Should we make it ceremonial? Her laugh was broken glass. I'll save you the trouble of deciding. She ran. This time, Theron didn't follow. Through the bond, she felt him let her go, and that hurt worse than anything. He was already pulling away, already starting the process of severing their connection. Already choosing duty over her. Kira ran through corridors and upstairs, past startled servants and wounded warriors, until she reached the highest tower, the one that looked out over the battlefield, over Seraphine's encampment, over the world Theron was so desperate to save. The world that wasn't worth one Omega's life. She stood at the window and felt the soul leeches gathering around her, drawn by her despair. In the reflection of the glass, she saw the thing that had worn Alara's face, its black eyes gleaming with hunger. Ready to make a deal, little Omega, it whispered. And for the first time since her resurrection, Kira seriously considered saying yes. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5. Kira stared at the shadow creature's reflection in the glass, its black eyes promising power and oblivion in equal measure. What kind of deal, she heard herself ask. The kind where everyone wins. Its voice was silk and poison. You come with us willingly into the death realm. We feed on your life force, slowly, over centuries. In exchange, we close the tear, stop the devouring, and your precious Alpha King gets to live. I'd be your prisoner. You'd be alive. Technically. It circled closer, and she could smell decay on its borrowed breath. Better than what he's planning, isn't it? At least this way, you choose your own fate. Kira's hands gripped the windowsill. Below, she could see fires burning in Seraphine's camp, could hear the distant sounds of battle as another wave of attackers hit the outer walls. The castle was dying. The pack was dying. And Theron was going to kill her to save them all. She'd thrown herself in front of a silver bullet for him, and this was how it ended. I need time to think, she said. You don't have time. The devouring accelerates with each death. By dawn, the veil will be so thin we won't need a deal, we'll just take what we want. The creature leaned close. But I'm feeling generous. You have until moonrise. After that, the offer expires. It melted back into the shadows, leaving her alone with her breaking heart and the mate bond that was slowly tearing itself apart. Through that bond, she felt Theron downstairs, surrounded by his council. She felt his anguish, his desperation, his terrible resolve. He was making plans. Deciding logistics. Figuring out the kindest way to sever their connection and let her die. She should hate him. Instead, she just felt empty. A knock on the door made her turn. Marcus stood there, his face haggard, demon's blood still staining his sword hand. May I come in? She nodded, too tired to send him away. He crossed to stand beside her at the window, and for a long moment, they just watched the battle below. I killed him, Marcus said finally. My Alpha's brother. I've served this family for 20 years, and I killed one of them. He was going to kill me. I know. But that doesn't make it easier. He turned to face her. Demon was right about one thing. He said I was creating a convenient scapegoat with my misguided heroics. He knew I'd been trying to stop the prophecy. He used my guilt against me, let me think I was the traitor while he pulled strings in the shadows. You were trying to save Theron. I was trying to murder him. Marcus's voice was raw. Maybe my intentions were good, but the action was the same. I hired those assassins, Kira. I put silver bullets in their guns. I'm the reason you died in the first place. She should feel angry. Instead, she just felt numb. Why are you telling me this? Because someone needs to know the truth. And because I found something. He pulled a scorched piece of parchment from his jacket. In Demon's chambers, after. He'd been researching the curse too, but from a different angle. Looking for ways to trigger it, not prevent it. Kira took the parchment. The writing was old, faded, but legible. The devouring cannot be stopped by death alone. Blood calls to blood, love calls to love. Only in willing sacrifice made as one can the curse be unmade. Two souls, bound by true love, must walk together into the darkness. If their bond holds, if their love proves stronger than death itself, they will bridge the realms and be reborn as something new. If not, they will be consumed, and the devouring will feast eternal. Her hands shook. This is talking about a loophole. A possibility, Marcus corrected. But Demon circled this part, if their bond holds. He didn't think it would. He thought Theron's sense of duty was stronger than his love for you, that when faced with actual death, the Alpha King would choose survival over sacrifice. Maybe he's right. No. Marcus's voice was firm. I've watched Theron these past days. I've seen him through the bond madness, through the siege, through discovering his brother's betrayal. He loves you, Kira. More than duty, more than his throne, more than his own life. The only reason he's even considering letting you die is because he thinks it's what you'd want, saving the pack instead of damning them for one Omega's life. Something cracked in her chest. Then he's an idiot. Probably. Marcus almost smiled. But he's our idiot. And if this text is real, if there's even a chance it could work, we'd both have to die. Together. Willingly. Yes. And trust that our love is strong enough to remake reality. Yes. Kira looked at the parchment again, at the words that offered hope and terror in equal measure. He'll never agree to it. He won't risk me. Then don't give him a choice. Before she could respond, the door burst open again. This time it was Theron, his eyes wild, power rolling off him in waves. What are you doing? He demanded, crossing to her in 3 strides. I felt you through the bond, you were talking to something. Something dark. One of the soul leeches offered me a deal. His face went white. Please tell me you didn't. I didn't accept. Yet. She held up the parchment. But I found something else. Another way. He read it quickly, his expression shifting from hope to horror. No. Theron. Absolutely not. I won't risk you dying again. I'm already dying. The words burst out of her. Can't you feel it? The bond is tearing apart because you've decided to kill me. Every time you think about severing our connection, it's like a knife in my chest. So don't tell me you're protecting me by choosing the safe option. There is no safe option. There's only different kinds of death. He reached for her, but she stepped back. If we do this, she continued, her voice steadier now, if we walk into the darkness together, at least we're choosing each other. At least we're fighting for something instead of just giving up. What if it doesn't work? His voice broke. What if we die and stay dead, and the devouring happens anyway? Then we die together. She finally let him take her hands. I'd rather have that than watch you live without me, knowing you killed me to save everyone else. Could you do that, Theron? Could you actually go through with severing our bond? Through their connection, she felt his answer, no. God help me, no. I've been trying to find another way, he whispered. I've had every scholar, every healer, every magic user in the castle searching for alternatives. But there's nothing. It's your death or the world's death, and I can't choose. So let's choose together. She pressed the parchment into his hand. Marcus found this in Demon's chambers. It's a loophole in the curse. If we both sacrifice ourselves willingly, if our bond holds, we might be able to break it entirely. Might. It's better than definitely. A horn blared outside, 3 short blasts. The signal for a major breach. Marcus cursed and ran to the window. Seraphine's forces broke through the east gate. We have maybe an hour before they reach the inner keep. Theron's jaw clenched. Tell the commanders to fall back to the second defensive line. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Sir. Go, Marcus. That's an order. The beta hesitated, then nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Alone now, Theron pulled Kira against his chest, and she felt his heart hammering. I can't lose you again, he said into her hair. When you died the first time, something in me broke. I became someone I didn't recognize, someone willing to perform forbidden magic, start wars, damn the world just to hear you breathe again. And now you're asking me to walk into death with you, trusting a maybe loophole written in a half-burned text. Yes. You're insane. Probably. She pulled back to look at him. But I'm also right. This is the only way that doesn't end with one of us alone, drowning in guilt and grief. We started this together, Theron. We should finish it together. His hands cupped her face, and through the bond she felt his fear, his love, his desperate need to find another option even though they both knew there wasn't one. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it properly. In the Obsidian Temple, where it all began. And if we die? When we're reborn, she corrected. If we die, he continued firmly, then at least my last moments will be spent loving you. The word loving hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. They'd confessed feelings, yes, but they hadn't had time for anything more. Their entire relationship had been crisis and chaos, death and resurrection, siege and betrayal. Now, with maybe an hour left before the castle fell or they attempted an impossible sacrifice, Kira realized she didn't want to die, or be reborn, or whatever was coming, without really, truly knowing what it felt like to be his. Then love me now, she whispered. His eyes darkened. Kira. We might not get another chance. She pulled at his blood-stained shirt. I don't want to go into that darkness without knowing what we could have been. What we could have had. For a moment, duty warred with desire on his face. Then desire won. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning, like she was the sun and he'd been living in shadow. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and through the bond their emotions crashed together. Love and fear and desperate need all twisted into one overwhelming sensation. They barely made it to the bed. Clothes disappeared in a tangle of fumbling hands and breathy laughs when buttons wouldn't cooperate. And then there was just skin on skin, his weight pressing her into the mattress, his voice rough in her ear saying her name like a prayer. Are you sure? He asked, even as his body trembled with restraint. I've never been more sure of anything. What happened next was clumsy and perfect and nothing like the romance novels Kira had secretly read in the healing ward. It hurt a little, then felt strange, then felt amazing as their bodies learned each other's rhythms. And through it all, the bond blazed between them, amplifying every sensation until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When they finally collapsed together, breathless and tangled, Kira felt tears on her cheeks and wasn't sure if they were hers or his or both. I love you, she said. Simple words that felt like a vow. I love you too. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Whatever happens in that temple, whatever we become, that won't change. I promise you. A massive explosion rocked the castle. Stone dust rained from the ceiling, and shouts echoed from below. Their hour was up. Theron dressed quickly, helping her into fighting leathers that someone had left for her. She strapped on the knife he'd given her, and he belted on his sword, and they stood together in the ruins of his chambers, looking at each other like it might be the last time. Ready? He asked. No. She took his hand. But let's do it anyway. They made their way through the castle, dodging fallen debris and injured warriors. The battle had breached the inner keep, Seraphine's forces were everywhere, their red and gold banners a slash of color against stone walls. Marcus met them at the entrance to the temple passage, his sword already drawn. I'll hold them here, he said. Buy you whatever time you need. Marcus. Don't. The beta's smile was sad. I killed Demon. I hired assassins. I nearly destroyed everything you love. Let me do this one thing right. Let me give you time to save us all. Theron gripped his friend's shoulder. If we survive this. When you survive this, Marcus corrected, we'll talk about my punishment. Until then, I have a siege to manage. He raised his sword as footsteps echoed down the corridor. Now go. And Theron? Tell her she was right, you were always terrible at being alone. Then he charged toward the sound of approaching enemies, his battle cry echoing off stone. Theron and Kira ran down the secret passage that led to the obsidian temple. Behind them, they heard steel clash against steel, heard Marcus shouting orders, heard the sounds of warriors fighting and dying so that two people in love could have a chance at an impossible miracle. The temple doors were still bent from when Theron had kicked them open days ago. Now he shoved them wider, and they stumbled into that space of black stone and ancient power. The altar where Kira had been resurrected still bore marks from the blood eternal ritual. The runes on the floor glowed faintly, responding to their presence. How do we do this? Kira asked, her voice echoing strangely. I don't know. Theron pulled out the scorched parchment. It says, walk together into the darkness. Maybe literally. As if summoned by his words, shadows began pouring from the corners of the temple. Not normal darkness, this was alive, writhing, hungry. The soul leeches had found them. And with them came the thing that had worn Alara's face. Its black eyes gleamed with anticipation. The Alpha King and his Omega Bride, it purred. Come to sacrifice yourselves? How delicious. We're not your meal, Theron said, positioning himself between Kira and the creatures. We're ending this curse. Are you? The thing laughed. Do you even know what you're attempting? The ritual requires perfect trust, perfect love, perfect willingness to die for each other. One moment of doubt, one flicker of self-preservation, and you'll be torn apart. Most couples fail within seconds. We won't, Kira said, stepping up beside Theron. So confident. But when the darkness starts consuming you, when you feel your soul being ripped from your body, will you still hold on to him? Or will you let go to save yourself? Kira took Theron's hand. Through the bond, she felt his fear and determination mirroring her own. There's only one way to find out, she said. The shadows surged forward, and they stepped into the darkness together. Immediately, agony exploded through every nerve. It felt like being torn apart at the molecular level, like every cell in her body was being separated and scattered. She screamed, or tried to, but the darkness swallowed sound. Through the bond, she felt Theron experiencing the same torture. Felt his instinct to pull away, to protect himself. Felt him fighting that instinct, holding onto her hand even as something tried to pry them apart. Don't let go, she thought desperately. Please don't let go. Never, his mental voice came back, fierce despite the pain. I'll never let you go. The darkness pressed in from all sides, suffocating and infinite. Kira felt her death sense screaming. They were dying, both of them, their life forces draining away into the void. But something was different this time. Before, when she died from the silver bullet, she'd been alone in the in-between realm. Lost and wandering until Theron's ritual had pulled her back. Now, she wasn't alone. Theron was there with her, his presence a bright point in the darkness. And their bond, instead of breaking, it was transforming. The silver thread that connected them began to glow, to pulse, to grow stronger. The soul leeches tried to feed on them, tried to drain their life force like they had with the other pack members. But when they touched the bond, they recoiled, burning. Because the bond wasn't just love anymore. It was something more. Kira's death sense suddenly exploded outward, no longer just showing her when people would die, but showing her the entire web of mortality that connected every living thing. She saw the past, the ancient wolves who'd made the pact with the death realm 500 years ago, trading love for power. She saw the present, the soul leeches feeding, the siege, Marcus fighting to his last breath. And she saw the future. Multiple futures, branching and splitting like a tree. In one, she and Theron failed. The darkness consumed them completely, the devouring spread, and the world became a wasteland of shadows. In another, they died but the curse broke, saving everyone at the cost of their own existence. But in the third, the one that glowed brightest, they didn't just survive. They transcended. I see it, she gasped through the pain. Theron, I see what we're supposed to become. His mental voice was strained. What? Eclipse wolves. Neither fully alive nor fully dead. We'll bridge both realms, break the curse not by dying but by remaking it. We'll absorb the Death Realm's power and make it ours. That's impossible. So was bringing me back from the dead. So was falling in love when you were supposed to marry someone else. So was walking into this darkness together. She squeezed his hand, felt him squeeze back. We're already impossible, Theron. Let's be impossible together. The soul leeches sensed what they were attempting and attacked with renewed fury. The darkness became teeth and claws, tearing at them, trying to separate them before they could complete the transformation. But Kira held on. And Theron held on. And the bond between them blazed brighter, brighter, until it was no longer silver but black shot through with starlight, the color of the space between life and death. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, they consumed the darkness. It happened in a rush, the soul leech's power flooding into them, the Death Realm's energy becoming theirs to command. Kira felt her body reforming, but changed. Stronger. Faster. Her senses expanded to encompass both the living world and the realm of the dead. And Theron. She felt him transforming too, his alpha power merging with death magic to create something entirely new. They emerged from the darkness together, landing on their feet in the obsidian temple. The runes on the floor were blazing now, rewriting themselves in real time. The shadows that had filled the room were gone, absorbed into their bodies. Kira looked at her hands. They were marked with silver-black patterns that shifted like smoke under her skin. When she looked at Theron, she saw similar marks tracing up his arms, across his chest, framing his face. His eyes met hers, and they were no longer just gray, they held galaxies. Did we? She started. I think we did. He pulled her against him, and she felt their bond now, no longer a thread but a living constellation, unbreakable and eternal. How do you feel? Powerful. She tested her limbs, felt strength thrumming through them that made her previous Omega weakness seem like a distant dream. Different. Like I could reach into the Death Realm and pull souls back if I wanted to. Can you? She focused, reaching out with her new senses. Yes. And you can too. We both can. We're. She searched for the word. We're balance. Life and death, not separate but unified. An explosion rocked the temple. Right, the siege. They'd been so focused on transformation that they'd forgotten about the actual battle happening above them. Time to test these new abilities, Theron said, his voice carrying an edge of excitement. He grabbed her hand. Ready to stop a war? They ran up from the temple and burst onto the castle grounds. The scene was chaos, Seraphine's warriors everywhere, the castle's defenders being pushed back, Marcus surrounded by enemies and bleeding from a dozen wounds. Kira raised her hand without thinking, and shadows poured from her fingertips, but these weren't hungry, consuming shadows. These were hers, obedient and controlled. They swept across the battlefield, separating attackers from defenders, creating barriers of solid darkness that no one could cross. Theron let out a howl that shook the very stones. But it wasn't just an alpha command, it carried the weight of the Death Realm, and every wolf who heard it felt their mortality become suddenly, terrifyingly real. Seraphine's forces faltered. Some dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees. And Seraphine herself, standing at the head of her army in red armor, stared at Theron and Kira with undisguised horror. What have you become? She breathed. Something new, Theron said, his voice resonating with power. Something that doesn't need your alliance or your army. The old ways are done, Seraphine. The curses, the political marriages, the wars over territory and pride, all of it ends now. Kira felt the Death Realm's power thrumming through her. She could see the mortality web connecting everyone on the battlefield. Could see that Seraphine had maybe 40 years left. Could see that Marcus had minutes if someone didn't help him. She made her choice. Walking across the battlefield, she knelt beside the bleeding Beta and placed her hands on his wounds. Drawing on her new abilities, she pulled life energy from the Death Realm itself and poured it into him. The wound sealed, color returned to his face, and his eyes fluttered open. "My lady," he whispered, staring at her transformed appearance. "What?" "You're not dying today," she said firmly. "You killed a traitor to save me. That earns you a second chance." Around them, the battlefield had gone silent. Everyone was watching the Omega who'd been nobody, who'd died and come back, who now commanded shadows and life itself. Seraphine's army was broken. Not by force, but by awe and terror. The Alpha Princess herself looked at Theron, and something in her perfect face crumbled. "You really loved her that much," she said quietly. "Enough to walk into death itself?" "Yes. I would have made you a good political ally." "I know. But she made me a better man." Seraphine was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she removed her helmet and bowed her head. "I concede," she said. "My father won't be pleased, but this siege was always about pride, not justice. You've proven your bond is real. That you're Omega," she glanced at Kira, "your mate is worth more than any alliance I could offer." "What will you tell your father?" Theron asked. "That the Alpha King has become something beyond our laws, beyond our curses, beyond our petty politics. That attacking him further would be suicide." Her smile was bitter. "And that I'm tired of being a pawn in other people's games. Maybe it's time I found my own path." She signaled to her troops, and slowly, they began to withdraw. Kira helped Marcus to his feet and looked around at the transformed battlefield. The castle was damaged but standing. The pack members who'd been watching from the walls were staring at their Alpha King and his mate with expressions ranging from awe to uncertainty. They'd won. But they'd also fundamentally changed the world. "What happens now?" she asked Theron quietly. "Now?" He pulled her close, uncaring of the audience. "Now we figure out what Eclipse Wolves actually do. How we use these abilities. How we rebuild without the old curses hanging over us." "Sounds complicated." "Probably." His smile was the first genuinely relaxed one she'd seen on his face. "But we'll figure it out. Together." The word together resonated through their bond, strong and certain. They stood in the wreckage of the siege, covered in blood and shadow marks, neither fully alive nor fully dead but something beautifully in between, and Kira thought about the scared Omega she'd been just days ago. The one who'd been invisible, who'd watched Theron from the shadows, who'd never imagined she could be worth anything. She'd been wrong. She was worth a war. Worth a resurrection. Worth walking into death itself. And more than that, she was worth fighting for. Theron kissed her forehead. "Come on. We have a lot of explaining to do to the council. They're going to have questions about the whole becoming death-powered wolves thing. Let them question." Kira grinned. "We're the ones with the answers now." 6 months later. The training grounds were full of new Eclipse-touched wolves, pack members who'd volunteered to walk the edge between life and death, who wanted to learn how to bridge both realms. Kira stood at the center, demonstrating how to pull shadows without letting them consume you. Around her, a dozen students practiced, their movements still clumsy but improving. She discovered she had a gift for teaching. Maybe it came from all those years being invisible, learning by observation. Now she could pass that knowledge on to others who wanted to understand this new power. "Remember," she called out, "the shadows respond to intention, not force. Guide them, don't command them." One of the younger wolves, a girl barely 16, managed to create a small sphere of controlled darkness. Her face lit up with pride. "Lady Kira. I did it." "You did." Kira smiled. Now try holding it for 30 seconds. She felt Theron approaching before she saw him, their bond alerting her to his presence like a warm glow in her chest. He'd been in council meetings all morning, dealing with delegations from other packs who wanted to understand what eclipse wolves meant for the future of their species. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her against his chest. You saved me twice now, he murmured in her ear. Oh. She leaned back into his embrace. How do you figure? Once with a silver bullet. Once by walking into death with me. His lips brushed her temple. I'm starting to see a pattern. 3rd time's the charm? Let's not test that theory. He turned her to face him, and his expression grew serious. The council approved the new accords. No more forced political marriages. No more bloodline curses. Every wolf gets to choose their own mate, their own path. And what happens to all those old alliances? We rebuild them on actual trust instead of fear and obligation. He smiled. Seraphine's been helpful, actually. She's been talking to the other packs, explaining what happened here. Some are adapting faster than others. Kira watched her students practicing, watched them learn to balance life and death, to exist in the space between. They were rebuilding the world one lesson at a time. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Giving up the simple option? You could have let me die, married Seraphine, kept everything the way it was. Not for a second. He pulled her closer. That version of me was already dead, Kira. I was just too stubborn to admit it. You brought me back to life long before I resurrected you. Through the bond, she felt the truth of his words. Felt his contentment, his love, his absolute certainty that they'd made the right choice. I love you, she said, the words still feeling new and precious. I love you too. He kissed her, slow and deep, and around them the eclipse-touched students tactfully looked away. When they pulled apart, Kira grinned. You know, we still haven't had a proper wedding. The blood eternal ritual doesn't really count. Are you proposing to me, Omega? I'm an eclipse wolf, thank you very much. And yes, I suppose I am. His laugh echoed across the training grounds. Then I accept. When should we do it? How about tomorrow? That fast? We've already died together. Everything else is just paperwork. He shook his head, still smiling. You're going to keep surprising me for the rest of our immortal lives, aren't you? That's the plan. They stood together in the sunlight, neither fully of the living world nor the realm of death but something that bridged both. Around them, their pack was learning, growing, transforming into something the old wolves never could have imagined. The curse was broken. The prophecy was fulfilled and surpassed. And from the ashes of impossible choices and desperate love, a new kind of wolf had been born. Eclipse wolves. Legends in the making. And their story was just beginning. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.